The Calgary real estate market is slowing down, but not in all areas. And some parts of Calgary are actually defying the slowdown, and owners in those areas are smiling right now. Good chunks of Calgary are actually seeing year-over-year price declines, but in these areas we're seeing tight inventory, rising prices, and some sellers are actually getting multiple offers, while sellers in some parts of Calgary are actually seeing a dip in their equity. So in this video, I'll show you the top 5 areas of Calgary that are outperforming the market. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk about the top performing areas of Calgary. Now, when I first started this, I thought I'll just do the top 5, but I think I can give you the top areas per section of the city. It won't take too long. Now, this topic can be very dry and analytical, so I'll try to make it as simple as possible and just right to the point. And just a bit of a note here to start off with. So we have the median price, the average price, and the benchmark price. For this video, I'm going to use the benchmark price, which the real estate board says is the most reliable metric to use. Now, the benchmark price is kind of weird to explain. It's like an estimated value in a specific area based on the traits that are common in that area. So how the real estate board comes up with this term, I don't know, but they do say that it's the best metric to use. So I'm going to start off with that. And I'm going to break the city down into the different sections. So city center, Northwest Calgary, West End, East Side, etc. And I'm not going to go through every one of these. I'll just give you like the main points, the main areas that are holding their value in our current market, which is balancing out. Some areas are actually turning into a buyer's market, and some areas are still pretty good. And I'll let you know what areas those are. And the first one to make note of is Banff Trail, up 3% year over year. And the average price is also up 16%, and the median price 10%. Now, Banff Trail, I think, is a good neighborhood because it's not far from downtown, easy access to the university, to Foothills, to Crowchild Trail. There's a C-train stop there, plenty of shopping as well. And it's not cheap, but it's not super expensive either. So I think it ticks off a lot of boxes. So Banff Trail, I think, is a great spot to buy a property. And next up, a lot of these are negative, but we come across Capitol Hill is up 1%. Capitol Hill is very similar to Banff Trail, which I just mentioned. It's just the neighborhood to the east of it, so I'm not going to say too much more about it because they are quite similar. And next up, a lot of negatives here, but we do come across a big one here, and that's positive 13% for Briar Hill. Now, Briar Hill is an inner city location on the hill overlooking downtown. So fantastic location, a lot of very nice, expensive homes here, especially the ones that are right on the hill overlooking the valley. You can't go wrong buying in Briar Hill. So no surprise there that it's holding its value. If we go down here, there's a few here, up 5, 4, and 8. So first up here is Mount Pleasant. Now, Mount Pleasant is kind of similar to Capitol Hill and Banff Trail. I would say Mount Pleasant might be a little bit higher end than the other two. Excellent inner city central location. You've got access to 16th Avenue, Confederation Park. Easy to get around from this part of Calgary. I would consider living in Mount Pleasant. I think it's a great neighborhood. So I can definitely see why it's holding its value. Next up is Parkdale. Parkdale is a fantastic neighborhood as well, right along the Bow River. It's not far from Kensington, but it's still walking distance from the Kensington area. Also walking distance to the Foothills Hospital. Lots of luxury properties in Parkdale. Quite a scenic location. If you can buy in Parkdale, I think you'll be very happy, and it should hold its value for the long term. It's a very desirable area. And next up is Park Hill, up 8%. Now, Park Hill is a small neighborhood. There's not that many sales, so this might be skewed because there could have been a few, big sales recently, and that may be boosting the numbers here. It is a great neighborhood. It's kind of a mixture of condos and luxury single-family homes. If you can buy a home on the ridge overlooking the Elbow River or the downtown views, spectacular. Again, not very big, but I can definitely see why it's holding its value. It's a very nice neighborhood. Up 3% is Rosedale. Now, Rosedale's not all that different from Briar Hill. It's all luxury single-family homes, fairly big lots, outstanding inner-city location. And if you can buy here, it will always hold its value. Rosedale's a very popular neighborhood, and I'm not surprised to see that it's up 3%. Up 8% is Scarborough. Now, I'm going to skip over this one because Scarborough is a very small neighborhood, and I don't think there's enough stats to reliably say that it's up 8%. Good neighborhood, though. It's kind of like an old-fashioned neighborhood close to downtown with some older historic mansions. And up 4% is St. Andrews Heights. Now, this is kind of the same idea as Rosedale, as Briar Hill, as parts of Crescent Heights. They're all kind of similar on the hill overlooking the valley. And they're not all that different, to be honest, and they're all quite desirable. So I'm going to skip over this one, kind of the same idea as the other neighborhoods on the hill. West Hillhurst up 5%. I can definitely see that. West Hillhurst is part of Kensington, a very desirable part of the city, just across the river from downtown. So outstanding location. There's shopping, there's bars, there's restaurants that are walking distance to downtown. You'll find a lot of schools here, access to the river. You've got a mixture of condos and upper class homes. So I think West Hillhurst, definitely a very desirable area. And the last one of the inner city locations is Winston Heights Mount View, up 3%. Now this one is kind of similar to Capitol Hill, Mount Pleasant. That whole area of Calgary is quite similar. And I'll just skip over that one for now because I've already talked about those areas. So that one's up 3%. And next up, let's talk about Northwest Calgary, which is a very desirable part of the city. And I'm a bit surprised to see so many negative year-over-year benchmark prices here. I thought it'd be a bit more stable and maybe positive, but there are some here. And the first one would be Charleswood, up 3% year-over-year. Now I would say Brentwood, Charleswood, Collingwood, they are all fantastic neighborhoods. That whole Tri-Wood area, I think it's very scenic, it's very hilly. You've got good connection routes in and out, some good shopping, not all that far from downtown. Lots of schools around here too. I think it will always be very popular. You can't really go wrong buying in the Tri-Wood area. And next up, we've got Montgomery, up 3% year over year. I'm not surprised. I live in Montgomery right now, and I think it's quite convenient. I just made a video about this neighborhood. If you're curious, you can go to my video feed. Just maybe a month or so back, I created it. And Montgomery ticks off a lot of boxes. It's not super expensive. It's easy to get around. You've got good connection routes. You've got Market Mall, not far from downtown, good access to the river. So for me, it ticks off a lot of the boxes, and I think it's a pretty good neighborhood. Next up is Ranchlands. Now, Ranchlands up 2% year over year. Now, Ranchlands gets a bad rap because it's not as fancy as other parts of Northwest Calgary, but I think it's becoming more popular because Northwest Calgary is getting a bit pricey. I talk to a lot of buyers and they want to live in Northwest Calgary, but their budget is like in the 600s. But a lot of these neighborhoods here, the average prices are like in the 700s now. So people are getting priced out, but they still want to live in the Northwest. So I think areas like Silver Springs and Ranchlands are becoming more popular. And that could be why you're seeing positive year-over-year pricing here. And next up, let's talk about Silver Springs. So the same idea as Ranchlands. I think I would prefer Silver Springs. I think it's just a bit more scenic, and I like the style of homes better here. It could be a great area to renovate a property and maybe fix it up and flip it. I think that could be a good thing if you're buying in Silver Springs. And the last two here, we've got Tuscany, which is flat. I think Tuscany will always be a very popular neighborhood. You can't really go wrong with Tuscany. Lots of schools here, super family friendly. So I'm not surprised to see Tuscany holding its value. And the last one here in the Northwest is University Heights. So obviously just tucked into the university, close to the schools, close to Foothills Hospital, not far from downtown, good access with 16th Avenue. And it's an expensive neighborhood. The average price here is about $1.1 million. So quite a nice neighborhood. I'm not surprised to see that it's holding its value as well. Let's talk about North Calgary. Now, there's not much to talk about here in terms of holding their value because all of the neighborhoods in North Calgary are actually declining. And some of these are quite big. If you look at minus 8% for Livingston, which is a newer, not brand new, but maybe 5 years old or so. You've got minus 8 for Nolan Hill, same idea as Livingston. Minus 11% for Panorama Hills. So there are some big decreases here. So that's the north central part of Calgary. There are no neighborhoods that are actually performing better year over year. So not much to talk about there. If we move on to Northeast Calgary, same idea. Now, Northeast Calgary is performing probably the worst in the entire city right now. Look at minus 6, 7, 5, 7, 7, 5, 9, 6, 7. So the whole part of Northeast Calgary, we're seeing declining year-over-year benchmark prices. Now, why is this? I think the Northeast just got too expensive. That's my opinion. And I also think that there's so many new builds that are coming up in this part of Calgary, and these new builds are putting pressure on resale pricing. So it could be a combination of both of those. So there's nothing positive right now in terms of benchmark price gains in Northeast Calgary. And next up is Southeast Calgary. And if you look at the stats here, all negative actually. I'm a bit surprised by that, but we are seeing a huge amount of new builds coming online right now, and many of them are located in the southeast part of the city. And real estate is just supply and demand. If these builders keep flooding the market, it will drop the prices for the resale homes. I think that's what you're seeing right now in Southeast Calgary. But don't get me wrong, this is a very nice part of the city, very desirable. And I'd have no issue living here. It's just right now we're seeing a lot of competition from new builds. That's driving down prices in the Southeast. So no positive numbers here in terms of the year-over-year benchmark pricing. And next up, let's talk about East Calgary. Now, East Calgary is the most affordable part of the city. And despite being affordable, you are still seeing large decreases in the year-over-year pricing. -9, 10, 5, 6, 4, 7, 9, 8, 6. East Calgary is definitely a bit more industrial compared to other parts of Calgary, not as desirable, I would say. And there are lots of new builds popping up here as well on the eastern edges of Calgary, and that could be putting pressure on pricing as well. So not too much in terms of positive numbers to talk about on the east side of Calgary. And we're almost done here, just 2 more sections to cover. And now we got South Calgary, a huge area. I'll try to be as brief as possible. And first up is Bonavista Downs, up 1% year over year. Now I'm going to lump in Bonavista Downs, Deer Ridge, Deer Run, Queensland. These areas are kind of similar, and I think they're a bit of a hidden gem in that there's lots of schools, lots of park space, and they're not that expensive, to be honest. So I think if you're like a first-time home buyer and you're looking for like a single-family home but you want some affordability, I would target these areas myself. If you wanted to live in the south part of Calgary, positive 3% increase for Kelvin Grove. That is a bit more of a luxury neighborhood, not far away from the Rocky View Hospital. Very desirable part of South Central Calgary. And next up is Maple Ridge, which is flat. Now, I can definitely see that because Maple Ridge seems to be an area that people move into and they never seem to leave. Like, I can count on one hand how many times I've showed properties in Maple Ridge. Like, it seems to never happen. People just move in there and they never leave. So I think it's holding its value quite well. We've also got flat for Shawnee Slopes, which is kind of like an old area that's been revitalized with some new developments. So the older part of it has some nice single-family homes, and the new part is all condos and townhouses. So it's a bit of a mixture. I think it's a pretty cool neighborhood, and you're seeing it hold its value. We've also got a gain of 1% for Sundance. Now, Calgary's South Lake communities, you can't really go wrong. There's a bunch of them: Midnapore, Sundance, Auburn Bay, Mahogany, Lake Bonavista, Mackenzie Lake. I think in any of these neighborhoods, you can't really go wrong. They will always hold their value. People love the lakes in Calgary, and there's not that many of them in southern Alberta. So I think they're always going to be in demand. A positive gain of 3% for Wolf Willow, which is a newer neighborhood, and it's actually fairly affordable for a brand new neighborhood. So I think that's why you're seeing it hold its value. It's just a good price point for a brand new area. And that would be it for South Calgary. And now let's target the west side of the city, which many would say is the most desirable part of Calgary. And despite that, there are still some negatives here in terms of the year-over-year benchmark price. And the first one that's positive here is Discovery Ridge, which is up 2% year over year. Now, I like Discovery Ridge. I think it's pretty cool. It looks like a different city. Like, it looks like you're in Banff, like out in the mountains. It's very rugged, very alpine looking, good price point. You see the average price here. The benchmark price, is $861,000. So quite expensive, very scenic, very beautiful. And that could be why it's holding its value. And next up is a positive 2% gain for Glendale. Now, I like Glendale, Glenmorgan, Glenbrook. I think it's a good part of the city. You got some older single-family detached homes, lots of schools around here. I think this could be an area in the future that gets a lot of redevelopment, a lot of infill activity. I think it could be an area for first-time home buyers to target and even investors. So keep an eye on those 3 neighborhoods. And next up, let's talk about Lakeview, which is up 5% year over year. So a pretty big gain. Lakeview is tucked right into the Glenmore Reservoir, and there's tons of park space here. An upper class neighborhood for sure. There are parts of it that can be very expensive. I'm talking into the multi-million-dollar price point. So a very expensive part of Calgary, very desirable, and I think it will always hold its value. Same thing with North Glenmore Park, just next to Lakeview, up 3% year over year. Not all that different from Lakeview, to be honest. So I won't spend too much on this one. And next up, I'm going to lump in Ross Carrick and Spruce Cliff together. They're both up 1%. The neighborhoods are right next to each other. And the big draw for these two neighborhoods is that it's great for investors, builders, renovators. You're seeing a lot of people buy these older properties, knock them down, make like luxury single-family homes or duplexes here. Good location right near the C train stop. You've got the Westbrook Mall and not that far from downtown as well. So a pretty prime location. And the last one to talk about here is Strathcona Park, which is flat. Now, I think this is a great West End community, great for families. You have the scenic ravine in the middle, upper class properties, not that far from downtown. And I can definitely see why it's holding its value. It's a great neighborhood. All right, we're done here. So the Calgary real estate market is definitely balancing out, but there are still parts of the city that are performing quite well. Now, if you are thinking about making a move, buying, selling, or relocating, I'd love to be a resource and help you out. If you have questions about your own specific situation, buying, selling, or whatever, feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. I've also got some free resources for you in the pinned comment, a buyer's guide, seller's guide, and a relocation guide. Feel free to reach out again. I'd love to be a resource, and I will see you on the next video.